Oh, everyone, what I want to point out. On the last stream, I mentioned this cool YouTube CSS that I did. Let's go to YouTube and check it out. And it has opened, believe it or not. Boom, where when you click this, and now it's far more minimal, all this, right? We know what's funny though. Notifications now don't show up for some odd reason, so don't use the CSS that I recommended. I'll probably change it up to something else, but as I realized pretty much entirely on the last stream, I slowly but surely break down when I try to do stuff on stream. And it's interesting to realize that that journey happened entirely on stream. All of that history is on my channel, public, to be viewed. The history of me, doing things in a way where I would eventually, burn out in a sense, you know? By the time of the usually 4 hours, that's, the time mark that I noticed mattered the most, after which I, went insane. I don't really want to do that, let's be honest. So the way these streams are going to go, basically, is I discovered some new things and I kind of show them to you, where, oh, look at this. Now I can do this way. You can also have it. So basically, kind of like my videos, but I don't have to edit them, LMAO and even lol. But more importantly, with the chance of people actually chatting in the chat, massively improving the experience in my opinion. What I love streams the most, and I'm the type of person to watch VODs all the time, it's the chat. The very poignant messages in there. They're so good. So, let's get to Anki, the title of the stream, right? Yesterday, we found this cool feature that was very new to me. I discovered it along with you. Let me elaborate on it a bit because I noticed a few things about it. So, first of all is FSRS. For some reason, that's hard for me to pronounce. Basically, it's a different scheduler for Anki that does things differently. Now, it doesn't really explain precisely how it works. As you can see, there's a link here that would explain it more fully, I imagine. And I'm going to read that off camera and then explain in more detail what that is. But aside from this part of the settings, there are other parts that have changed. First of all, if you try to set some period, which is bigger than a day, and then click off, it says when FSRS is enabled, learning steps of 1+ days are not recommended. Which I'm not gonna lie, is hard to trust, because the rule of thumb on the previous scheduler was make sure to review the card on the following day before it graduates. Because what if you were really smart on this one day? It doesn't really even have to be that extreme of a situation. It kind of happens all the time, where you see a card, then you see it again in 3 hours, for example, and maybe you're still in brain point, like Chopper from One Piece. So you get it. Another day comes and you forget it completely. That happens very often. So trusting it to not leave in a period of 1 day is hard to trust, right? Wait, is the stream working, by the way? Yeah, I'm reading One Piece manga now. Not gonna lie, kinda tired of the anime. It drags on, and it was supposed to get better at Wano, and maybe it did. I kinda couldn't notice. The big reason why I switched to manga is that I actually did not like the Whole Cake Island arc. I wasn't a fan of it. It felt like a slog. And Katakuya and Beji carried the arc, literally carried it. Without them, I would maybe even hate it, who knows. But I feel like maybe that's because I was watching the anime and things are overall worse there to a degree. Maybe if I was reading the manga, I would like it more. So yeah, now I'm reading the manga. And the Vimium extension makes it far more appealing to read things because scrolling is that much better. So what I'm doing currently is kind of like trusting the algorithm more so than I would usually. I'm like, all right, fine, let's set the good period, the good interval, the one and only before it graduates. So once you press good once on a card, it immediately graduates. Very scary because that's kind of how Ease Hell works. And Ease Hell is a situation where a card graduates too early before you actually properly learned it, and then you press again on it multiple times once it has already graduated, making the ease of the card very low, so every time you press good, the interval doesn't multiply as much as usual. And if that happens a lot, you get into Ease Hell, where you see cards way too often. But I've been a bit more liberal on actually pressing the easy button in my reviews. And if you press the easy button, ease increases. So you will see the card less often. And if you press hard, ease decreases as well, but not as much as again. But all of that is once the cards are graduated. If they're in the learning stage, which with my settings currently is just a single good, used to be 2 or even 3, I don't remember. If you're in the learning stage and you press again or hard, the ease doesn't change, so we don't have to worry about that. And that's pretty much the entire reason as to why people usually put a few periods in their learning steps. I think what it was for me is 1 day, then 3 days. And at one point, like 2 years ago, I also did 7 days. But that's a bit too much. After all, there's a reason why ease increases and decreases. So if you're on the old scheduler, if you have this disabled, which you might, honestly, I'm not entirely sure how it works, so I'm just gonna, I guess, experimenting on myself. I can afford it, meaning that the old algorithm is still very much viable, in my opinion, unless maybe I read about this new algorithm and it's so much better that I'll come back to you guys to tell you all about it. So this was exactly to prevent a card from graduating too fast, so you don't get into Ease Hell. Because in the first time you press good, ease doesn't change. Well, when you press good, ease doesn't change regardless, right? But say you press good once, you see it in a day, and then once that day passes, you cannot answer the card. Well, in this case, you can press again for free and just restart the both good intervals that are given to you before the card graduates. So you can just press again, or hard if you want to. It's not always useful when it's in the learning stage, but maybe. You can press those buttons without any like a long-term effect onto you. So now the fact that it's less than a day where you supposedly learn a card and it matures kinda immediately, scary, isn't it? I think it's a bit scary. Because now I press good on a card once, boom, it graduated. So I'm very interested how that affects me long term. But this is such a known, I guess, quote unquote, issue in the community. It's a buzzword, I guess. Yeah, it's pretty much a buzzword in the community, ease hell. That I imagine this algorithm somehow manages it. It specifically tells us not to put like multiple days there. It would be stupid if they said that and they weren't somehow like addressing the ease hell issue, right? So that's why I'm trusting it. I'm not necessarily saying that you should too. At least not yet. So that's the thing that changed, and also now we cannot change the interval for the easy. I skipped mentioning what easy does when a card is in the learning stage. So what easy does is that it graduates the card immediately. So say you have 3 hours and then maybe 12 hours. You could set that. And you see a new card that you haven't seen before, but it's so easy to you that you immediately get it, and it's like, oh, I don't need to see it in 3 hours, I super know it. Just want to make sure that I continue to know it by using Anki. My cat is saying meow very loudly. So when you press easy, in that case, it immediately graduates. With the previous scheduler, you could actually change the interval, but by default it's 4 days, and now we can't change it, so it is 4 days, which is pretty reasonable, but interesting decision to stop us from changing it. I wonder why. I don't see how that like correlates with the new algorithm, but well, who knows? So on the again button, I still have 1 hour because I think that makes a lot of sense. It almost ensures that I don't see my cards in the same like Anki going through session. So I like start going through Anki and maybe press again on my first card. It's unlikely that I'm going to see it again in the same session. Most likely, I'll finish up going through stuff and then come back later when it makes more sense to try to remember that card rather than too fast, like 2 minutes, 10 minutes rather, that it is by default. I think that's way too fast. But maybe it's just the nature of what I am trying to learn. I guess it depends on the content. And 3 hours I have to not only ensure that it's the next session. Hold up, let me deal with my cat. Actually, you know what I thought of? Can you hear me? Yeah, you can. Imagine, that would be hilarious. I would fucking end stream immediately. But yeah, you can. Okay. So 3 hours ensures that it's in the next session, and gives me quite a bit of time to forget some things, so that the more wobbly stuff I'm more likely to press again at. We could set it to something like 12 hours, but that's essentially the same as saying the next day, and they specifically told us not to. It's like almost impossible that I do a card, press again on it, and then I'll see it the same day, 12 hours later. I doubt it. But my first solution was 6 hours. What do I think about this? It's a similar case, but... well, actually, no. Yeah, I will most likely see it in the same day, but with a bigger period to possibly forget. I think I'll leave it to 6 hours then. In worst case scenario, it goes to the next day, which I think is a good thing. Because it's easier to remember things within the day, but once the day crosses out, that's when you forget most stuff. Why is my cat still meowing? Okay, so I'm gonna leave it at 6 hours then. And in lapses, we have relearning steps. This is the again button, but for mature cards. So the reason why I make it 2 hours is very simple, is so that mature cards are more easily recognizable. There's no real, like, meaning to 2 hours specifically. It's basically 1 hour but be different. Because it's sometimes helpful to know whether the card you just pressed space on to see the answer of, whether it's a mature card or a learning card. So when you go through a review, let's actually go and do that, which we can't because this window is open. That is hilarious. Let's save. So let's go to, Terraria NPC. So you can see at the bottom here that, okay, this is a learning card. And now let's actually try to remember what it is. So he hates Die Trader and dislikes cloth here. I press space. First of all, I'm right. Second of all, I might have forgotten in my journey of trying to remember the answer whether this card is a learning stage or mature, and I can no longer see those things that tell me which one it is. So by looking at the period of the again button, I can actually still tell that this is a learning stage card. So there is no negative to me pressing again or hard. I mean, something I can do, for example, say I wasn't sure of this answer. Thankfully I was, but maybe I wasn't, right? I could just press hard to not see it like too close to now, but still without pressing good, so it won't mature if you press hard. Or if it was a mature card, and maybe like, let me try to think of an example. Maybe, yeah, I remembered both of them, but it took me quite a lot of effort. That's when I would press hard, and that's what I personally recommend. If you missed some crucial detail, or completely didn't get it, or yeah, basically in those situations, you just press again. But if you did get the entire answer, but it was pretty difficult, or I guess quite difficult at that point, then you should probably press hard, because you did get it after all, but not as easily as you might have wanted. So that's the use case for hard. But yeah, it's good for me. Let's go to the settings again. Oh, you have to specifically be on a deck. And I think that's it in terms of the things that I noticed here in the settings. I wish my cat stopped meowing. That freaks me out a lot. I would rather, like, be calm, you know? It's like at this point, I'm pretty sure it's the autism that does it to me that much. Like, I'm sure I'm not the only one that gets annoyed by cats meowing sometimes, but it really throws me out of my element, like, significantly. It's honestly strange. So I hope she stops meowing, I guess. It freaks me out a lot. So, the main feature that I actually wanted to talk about on this stream is something I discovered just today. Well, I guess not discovered. I knew that that feature existed, I just didn't know how to use it. And it is, hold up, this hotkey, boom. I almost remember that hotkey. Note types. So by default, what you have is basic. You have also both. You have close. You have type, and since some version, a kinda recent version, I'm on Arch. Maybe like the Debian guys still don't have that version. Who knows? Maybe Anki updates. No, I think it updates like normally. Yeah, image occlusion. And by the way, what that means is that you have an image and you like remove a part of that image and you need to remember what was in there. Pretty cool, but I haven't needed it yet. So for the longest time, and even 2 years ago, when I was like busted at Anki, I didn't really get note types. Like, okay, sure, we get our default ones, but why would you ever add another one? So we have like, how many types, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So we have 5 types. Why would you add another type which you already have? I couldn't really get that. Like, what's the use case? I figured it out. So let's go to code. And first of all, let's look at, let me remember what's more useful to show off to you right now. I think cards is more important. So we go into this menu. I'm not gonna lie, first time I looked at it, I was like, I have no clue what you're talking about. I closed it. Because what do you mean by one card, one front to back? I don't know, this syntax kind of seems confusing to me for some reason. It's not obvious to me. And to be fair, I still just don't look, hold up. No, it was supposed to be dramatic. I just don't look at this place. It doesn't tell me much. But I guess like this note type will create a single card. That's what it means, but I still don't like the syntax. I think it's kind of confusing, right? I do understand what it does now, but it doesn't feel good. Unsure how to explain it. So, what do we have here? First of all, we have front preview and back preview. How is that helpful? That is helpful in the sense that you can probably pretty clearly see that these two look very different. And why is that so? Because I figured out what note types are actually for. Styling. You can style your cards in a certain way by just using CSS. Now, if you're not familiar with CSS, don't worry about it. You don't need to know it pretty much whatsoever to already get a benefit. Anki, and I'm not sure what type of issue this is. Fucking X11? KDE? Kwin? No clue. But if in global settings I try to zoom Anki for more than 10%, it then doesn't tile. Why that happens, I have no clue, and I very much wish for you to not encounter this issue. Maybe it's like, I don't know, skill issue or EndeavorOS issue, who knows? I have no clue. So in other words, I didn't like how small my reviews were. Turns out I can just change the font size here. You change it in the CSS of a note type. And then it gets applied to all the cards that use this note type. Amazing, right? You can also change the default center line, which I think is great as well. And you can change, most importantly, the font. So, the default font that I set now for every note type is Ubuntu Nerd font. By default, Anki uses Arial, which I heard is like the infamous bad font. I wouldn't go that far, but I do find the meme funny. Hold up, is that like an actual meme? What's the meme like? Blah 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 enjoyers. Yeah. Arial fans and then enjoyers. Please be an actual meme. Holy shit, it exists! Oh my god, it exists. Okay, that's actually a pretty cool font. But Arial is far more reasonable. I'm actually surprised. I'm surprised that that meme exists. I felt like I was gonna have to make it. Guess not. Yeah, so I don't like Arial. It's the default font. And for me, I try to switch off most, if not all defaults. Not to the degree of, oh, I can't use systemd. I really couldn't care less. Because I don't even know what's the difference between systemd and grub. Ah, yes, two different boot systems, whatever that means. But in terms of fonts and PDF viewers, apparently, and definitely terminals, yeah, I am going to switch off the default, even if, oh, it's actually good. Yeah, right, fucking console. The terminal that greets you with two vertical, horizontal toolbars at the top. Yeah, that terminal is good. Fuck that. Even if it is, it's like, imagine you come to a house. Hold up, let me cook. Okay, you come to a house of a friend, and first thing you see is that their grandma comes out and calls you a slur, and your friend tells you, oh, don't worry about it, she's actually great. This little like bad thing about her, that's like a small deal in comparison to how great she is otherwise. I don't really care. My first impression is very bad, so I would rather just use something else. What a wonderful analogy. Yeah, so basically I like to switch off defaults everywhere, so now I use Ubuntu Nerd font for how my cards are going to look. So now they look a bit better in my opinion. So how do I actually change this to some font, which you'll figure out in a second? Let's go to front, and it's the first card, the question basically. I wrapped this, so front, in a code block, and it now uses my system's code font, which might just be KDE specific, that you can set a system-wide code font. But I'm hoping that KDE isn't that ahead of the competition. Like, surely a feature like this would be in GNOME, right? I'm hoping, because otherwise it's just very sad. Like, if you can't do this, why are you using GNOME? Okay, maybe that's not, like, the end of your dreams, let's say that. Maybe it's, like, not that important to you. Fine, but, like, I don't know, it feels like such a core Linux type of thing to be able to do. That would be quite sad to not be able to do it on GNOME. So I imagine that you can, is what I'm saying. So yeah, I wrapped it in a code block. So now it gets rendered that way. So now, anytime I want to create a card which question is some code, I use this node type, which is called code. And it then renders this, and the answer is in a non-monospace font, so it's just more text. And it's actually something that you can do. I'm like trying to think, should I show it to you today and come back to this menu? Or probably forget. I'll probably forget, so let me show you immediately then. What you can do is press Ctrl-Shift-X, boom, you get HTML editor, and you can actually just add code like this. So I don't know, code. And it's not very obvious, so let me type in here as well. Here you can, I imagine, pretty clearly see, at least I can tell a difference, that this is JetBrains Mono. By the way, I haven't actually told you which font I'm using. JetBrains Mono for the system-wide code font. And actually, I haven't even shown you how to set a system-wide code font. So yeah, that's how you do it. You go to fonts, and here you go. So I basically set everything to Ubuntu Nerd font, except fixed width is JetBrains. Yeah. Huh. All of these are quite interesting to look into. I think I just haven't yet. Yeah, so you can, if you want to interactively add code like this to render it differently. However, is this useful? Oh god, for fuck's sake. Yeah, that's not what I wanted to show you. I wanted to, let's do it this way. We cut it, boom. And we cut this as well, boom. Doesn't this look kind of ugly? When you're switching fonts mid-sentence, it's pretty ugly. And the way you might have gotten used to doing it like that is, say you're writing Markdown, and here using inline code, so using inline code makes much more sense, right? Because it already stands out quite a bit more, and when we preview, it stands out even more. So that it makes sense, but in Anki it doesn't. So something you can do, I think, is make a background color for all the code blocks Can we preview this from here? I feel like there was a way. I think it's previewing. Is it? Like, does the font change? I'm not sure. I think it is because of the distance between C and O. So let's try something actually. So we do background color white, we change it to black. And let's do cards again. Nothing really changed there. Well, basically, my point is that it may be possible to create a background color, like we just saw on the Markdown preview, that would mark code blocks like that. But I haven't like tried it out properly to show you. Yeah, let's go back to this menu. And go back here. Nope, not that. Cards is what I actually meant. Yeah, so this thing, found it very confusing at first. This you may consider as plain text that would be in an HTML, but it's done this way so that what you type in the front just basically gets pasted here along with the HTML, inline HTML that you might have written, and all of that gets wrapped by all the other HTML that you put here. And you could do a lot here, honestly. You could, wait, do you do it from here? I don't think so. We'll get to it. Basically, you can just use HTML here to create some certain preset for maybe a lot of cards that you're adding that all share a common like starter or context or layout. Boom, you can just edit HTML here and also here for the answer. So I'm not sure what this is. Let's cut it. See, when I was doing CSS here, I was trying things out. I was trying to understand how to target these. The answer to that is you kinda don't. But I saw this like, oh, it has an ID. Let's try to target that, and nothing happened. So that's what it is. It's the bar, I guess you could say. Interesting. I thought it was like some sort of built-in, but no, turns out it's just part of HTML that you can actually change. Okay, so this, right? We can change the font, size, text align, and color, I guess, which I haven't done either. Let's go to, yes, this card, to fields now, and this is the juicy part. Well, no, I guess this and cards together is the juicy part. Either of them by themselves is not as useful. So when you add a card, you have a front and you have a back. You can actually have a third one. What? Boom. But I'm not going to do it. I actually have a thing that is exactly that. So let's go to fields of Untain. Boom. It has front, back, and extra. So the front is the question. The back is me typing in a certain answer. And extra is extra information that I also need to remember, but don't have to type in because it's like too much or makes no sense to actually type in. And you know what's cool about all of this? Is that you can set the editing font to every single field. So you can see here that in the back, so in the field where I'm typing in the answer, it uses a different font while I'm editing. What does this mean? That means that while you're adding or editing a card, or a note, I guess, more specifically, that you will see the input in that field in this cool new font. And let me show this example more concretely. Let's go 10. So we have wherever. See? Looks quite different. It uses JetBrains Mono here and Ubuntu here and here. So if we were to actually add this card, we would then see wherever as the question. We would have to then type in wherever, and after we type it in and press enter, we see our answer. We first of all see if we got wherever and what are the diffs between that. And we will also see an extra card. Or would we? Vsauce music plays. No, we actually wouldn't. What? I know. Sounds strange. Then why the fuck did we add it? Right? Well, the thing is that you get to add your fields, reposition them, rename and delete them, I guess. But Anki doesn't decide for you how they're actually used. You do. You add them yourself to the place that you want them to appear at. And you don't actually have to edit this, or rather add this HTML yourself. You sober don't. You just this button, right? So you added a new field. You added a new field and now you have to add it. So you click extra, change the font probably. Liberation Sands? Really? Well, I guess, no, it's not ugly. Let's be fair here. I just don't like defaults overall. It's like my tick against them. You change a different font, so they're seen in that font. So it's not the editing font. It's not the font that you see when you're adding or editing a card. It's the font that you see when you actually see the card, when you review it. So you add that field, it adds this HTML with what you picked, and by default, it's this, which is a bit silly, which is why I added 2 line breaks to break them apart. Nice, right? So you can literally add as many fields as you want and place them in the specific places that you want them to be in. Yeah, and you don't necessarily have to add it to the back. You could add it to the front if you want to. Maybe there is like a bunch of cards that you want to add, that a part of which always starts on the left and needs a different font and a color. Who knows, right? And you can do exactly that. So you don't have to manually create the HTML every time. It would be very annoying. Yeah. Oh, and also, by default, it doesn't have the line breaks here, so the question and the input box both feel a bit like too close together. You know what we could do? We could HR ID ans. Nope, not cut. I wanted to copy, and we add it here. What happens? Nothing. It's not recognized here. Maybe if I do this. I guess not. Okay, fair. Let's do BR and BR again. So 2 line breaks, so they're a bit more apart. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, what we could do is do something like div class, and you give it a class, and we close the div, and then we go to styling, and we do like that class, and then padding down. I don't think it's down. Padding bottom, I think it's called, and like, I don't know, 5 pixels. So an overall smarter way of doing it, but in the same sense, a very roundabout way of doing it, you know? But it's something that you can do. So maybe you'll find it more useful than I'm currently finding it. And it's probably going to be true even to myself to the future, where I'm even more comfortable using this feature to a much greater extent. Who knows? And see what I mean by this is confusing? One card one, front plus back, into front plus back plus extra. God damn, right? Yeah, I don't like it. Yeah, so those two together, completely amazing. So now what I have is a note that's called code, where the first field looks like code, but the back field doesn't. I have edoc, which is code but reversed, where the first field, the question, the front looks like normal text, and the back, the answer, the second card, looks like code. If you're wondering about why I'm muting so often, it's because I'm coughing up a storm, because this stream is probably more of my voice, like more of my speech of the current day, like combined. Let's see how much I've been, 48 minutes, okay. Yeah, I probably spoke less than 48 minutes of worth today. I sometimes do voice exercises, but I honestly often can't be bothered. Thankfully, the dysphoria, the voice dysphoria, isn't as strong anymore. I'm like more confident in myself, so I don't care as much. But it's still very useful to be able to speak without coughing up a storm, you know? I also have cock. Very on point. This wasn't planned, lol. Which is both fields are code looking. And Tane is the extra one that I showed you already. Yeah, pretty sure that is the feature that I wanted to show off to you today. Trying to remember if there was anything else. I don't think so. But what I want to do is fix CSS. And let's see if that's a mistake to do on stream. So yeah, currently I don't see my notifications, which is hilarious. So I wonder what actually causes that, because it's my CSS. If I like remove it, then it's not an issue anymore. So let's open stylus here and go to YouTube domain. Boom, we're here. So let's comment out a bunch of stuff. We have switcher header and pre-switcher header. So let's comment this out, because for some odd reason I feel like it's that I don't really have any proof, but I feel like it. How interesting. So now I see the notifications thing and this. The reason why I don't need this is because there is a button for it, so I just don't need it. So in other words, header blah 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 is not precise enough. Content wrapper blah 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 header. Should probably stop vaping eventually. Eventually is very stretchy though. Okay, let's compare the two selectors that we would have to do. Let's do okay, let me cook. I want to I think I understood. I did not. I'm trying to have both this and this horizontal and this vertical, and I don't remember how you do that. I'll cook eventually. Maybe like this. We're almost cooking. We have cooked. Almost. Well, close enough, I think. Let's do it this way. Okay, so this thingy, let's click on it. And now we inspect this. So what do we have here? We have an H2, YTD button renderer. What do we target specifically? We target ID header. ID header. Which is also a div, which might be important to remember. Let's go up, 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 up. Also a div. Container submenu. Where does this lie? Wait, what was that info that just popped up here and disappeared? Ah. Oh, I see. That's so interesting. And also sucks. Why do they use the same elements when they're clearly not? Wow, that's wild. Do I understand this correctly? Look at the right. So now this is the header. And this is kind of, wow, that's wild. That is so interesting. They use the same HTML. That's crazy. That's crazy. Huh. Well, thankfully, I don't need either. So this is not actually the issue. So you have undeletable non-business channel that I can keep deleted, very much so. Super special channel, yeah, those worked. Those are completely fine. This is fine as well. I remember that working. So I think this is mostly the issue because I kind of have to use nth child because the HTML is not specific enough to target it somehow differently. So let's comment this out and comment that out. Last of type we might need to do, and actually, if I think about it, this is probably the issue. So before we comment out those, let's try out if this is the actual problem. Obviously, we have to copy it and boop boop. It is. Oh, I was looking at this like container and like screams here container, so I was like, what? Oh, I was gonna what's the proper word for this? Like share with pride, but not pride in the bad sense of it, you know? I forget the word for it. But basically, I've never actually told about this, but one of my most comforting YouTubers is Retromation. He makes videos on roguelikes, and he's the type of YouTuber to put out 2 1-hour videos a day. And it just came to my head that I am sometimes that YouTuber. Rarely, though. Usually not. But sometimes. Yeah, and he's so comforting. Just so chill to watch. I love to somehow go on his channel. Sometimes, I mean. Find a playlist, and then I'm just consuming the entire playlist. And basically, he hearted my comment, and it kind of made me feel very, very good. Yeah, so now we can see these by bringing back those. So what was happening in the CSS is that the only element here is the last one, because it's the last element, right? So it got removed. In other words, we can still remove these, but can you see that it's almost visible that it does do some stuff with the CSS? I'm guessing it's less visible now because these are here, which is a good sign. Basically, I like the idea of this, but especially if I come from another window that also has stylus applied on it and go here, it often is a bit more visible that like it catches up basically. Almost removing the point of like having CSS on it overall. This might be because my CSS is shit, and that's probably true. So, I'm actually going to remove a bunch of these. So Google account, I'm fine with having that, but sign out, I specifically want to not be there because it's a common mistake that I do. It's very annoying. Purchases and memberships. I don't mind. I don't really care. And these two, let's think about them. They kind of trail off. This already almost trails off, and it will just continue to do so. The only real thing that I'm looking at is this and this. So, yeah. And I was going to look at what position help and send feedback are, so I could remove specifically them rather than last of type. But I'm not going to see them anyway, so I don't mind them. So less CSS to do for stylus. So let's copy this. Boop boop. Got a bit more crowded. So I guess up to you to decide what's more worth it to you. Well, maybe the switching issue that I told you about doesn't really happen to you. I feel like you can also sometimes notice the CSS applying here. But all things considered, I might just be insane. That's very possible. Yeah. So that CSS is changed. Let's immediately commit it. First of all, something that I do pretty often, and maybe you have your own solution to this that feels more... I only think of the word comforting because that's how it feels to me. So yeah, I guess more comforting solution maybe you have, but maybe you don't. And I often do git diff to look at the wrong directory. Git diff to look at what changes I did before I commit. So I'm like, oh, I removed this, removed that, and that, and that. So I can remember what I did throughout this uncommitted changes, so I then can create a commit message. So I don't have to like try too hard to remember everything I did. I can just look. So yeah, git diff is very, very useful for this. But the people that use GUI Git clients, or maybe people who use TUI Git clients as well, I guess, you probably have something for this type of thing. In TUIs, it's generally just git diff, but displayed in some cool window. I've tried once, so I can't really say that, but I feel like it spreads out pretty consistently there. And in GUIs, there's probably something of that nature as well. Regardless, it's a very helpful thing to look at before you make a commit. So let's do stylus, bring back useless pre-switcher YouTube buttons. Bring back useless YouTube pre-switcher buttons. A lot of my commit messages are like, well, now I forgot the word. Skagawarka. I don't remember what it is in English. Tongue twisters. Yeah, that. But they're very information heavy, very information dense, which is probably more good than bad. Yeah, let's save this. I Okay, yeah, I remember what I also wanted to do. And I think I can do it. Not mechanically. I'm like now starting to consider my mental health. Oh yeah, those are actually quite annoying. Blue buttons. Well, are they? No. Because if you guys leave a comment on a video, I go to it, read it, like it, but then I probably remember it. The comment, that is. Yeah, sure, I'll remove that as well. So, so YouTube image shadow, ID avatar. Yeah, something of that nature. So PFPs and switcher are called content icons. Okay. Let's create a new one. So I think it's like pretty easy to do because the CSS is pretty easy to build. And I don't think it's something that will spiral out of control. I don't know if it's relatable to you, but sometimes you want to do this one little thing, but then that little thing gets a bit bigger and you're like, well, it's still small, let me continue doing it. And then you've spent 4 hours on this issue, you're almost crying, you're very tired, very hungry, and you're like apathetically empty. Does this happen to you? It happens to me kind of often. Used to, at least. I've now developed a bit better coping mechanisms, but it's still a work in progress. Okay, so let's do avatar. And now I don't trust that it uses an ID for a single thing, because it could possibly be multiple. So in case that's like a problem, I'll make the selector a bit more specific. YouTube image shadow. YouTube image shadow. Is that correct? Uh-huh. The classes I don't think we need, really. Background color is transparent, huh? Yeah, so we need to remove this. We do display none, PFPs, and notifications. Oh, and by the way, reason why I'm removing them, I never actually mentioned it, because you generally do want to see PFPs. I do. It's just that I don't, and I haven't been kinda since the war. I just don't see PFPs on YouTube anymore. I can if I turn on a VPN, but my ExpressVPN subscription has ended, and I haven't really needed it since, so I'm not about to spend $13 on it, which I barely have. Yeah, so I don't really see PFPs, so why have these circles, you know? Let's copy all of this and boop boop. It's interesting that I was very clearly focused here, but for some reason it forgot it, and it does that. It's kind of strange. Oh, because I saved. Nothing happened. Interesting. Why? That's very strange. This is not a class, it's a type. It's just sounds very long, like it is a type. Boom. Okay. See, it did it again. I guess because I pressed save again. Okay, yeah, it's consistent in that way, sorry. This looks weird, but it makes more sense. Now the dots definitely don't make sense though. And these I want to make sure to be very specific with in terms of the selector. So let's do this little trick. We will make a screenshot of this. Might say, why is that useful? No, you're probably you probably are guessing that I'm taking it for a reason. I like to make a character of the watcher, but sometimes what my character says is a bit ridiculous. Well, maybe it's not. Maybe there was a person that was like, huh, I wonder why. Yeah, I can take screenshots and place them on my screen. I think I have a video on that. Maybe. I don't know. Do I? Let's check. Videos. What do we have here? Hover screenshot 3 Linux. I apparently do. And yes, really, I do not remember whether I have videos or not. So yeah, if you want to watch it to figure out how to make this feature specifically on KDE, and I think specifically X11, which is very restrictive, I know, but that's my system and that's how I figured it out. If that's your system exactly, then you can have this feature as well. But maybe that video will just help you get an idea so you can implement it for yourself. Who knows? Yeah, so let's start with div new ytd notification renderer. And we display none that. Boop. Boop boop. Interesting. Huh. Very interesting. As I am the only one here. Manager of Leo the Legend. God damn, you sound epic. Let's add a comment to this. Blue notification markers and notification pop out. Boop. See? This is what I was talking about, by the way. The situation of, oh, this one little thing that now became another little thing. Okay. I think I can change that up as well. I'm like being very careful, so I like. So basically, I want to move in a way where I reinforce that streaming feels good, rather than reinforcing that streaming feels bad. I'm trying to find, yeah, that, I think. Yes, so let's try it out here immediately. The last one is the left one. Let me just add. Yeah, that's literally perfect. Looks very good. I have a feeling that you sent another message by this point, but maybe YouTube blocked it. Or maybe you wanted me to wonder. That would also be funny. See what I noticed? it has a lot of padding overall, and I could change it. And that I'm noticing is like a step beyond. First I changed the padding here, then I noticed then, I don't know, the fucking scroll bar is too wide, and so on and so on. So that would be a step too much. Actively trying to find these like steps of burnout, that's the first time I'm doing it actually, in this conscious of a fashion. Generally I'm not as conscious about it, and I should continue kind of like looking out like that. Okay, let's do a similar thing. Boom. So basically what I'm saying is that I'm not going to fiddle with padding aside from just setting it all to 16. And then maybe another time where I'm more interested with fucking with it. Yep, I did send a message before asking for what you're teaching. What am I teaching? Most of my videos, especially if you come from the era of AutoHotkey, I was pretty much only teaching there. But these times, not only. Often I just kind of show off my experience with something. Maybe I show off a program, maybe some cool feature of NeoVim, something like that. So I kind of just tag you along the adventure that I'm having in the field of programming, rather than specifically teaching. So right now we're just fiddling with YouTube CSS to make it look a bit nicer. I guess that's my answer. Let's add it on a separate line with a line in between. We do YTD and actually boom, magic of Vim. Yeah, you can press Ctrl P to autocomplete a word in your document, which might not always be a thing you can do via VS Code suggestions. Are you a full stack developer? I don't really consider myself in stacks. Let's say that. I don't do web dev, basically. I've never cared about it. Well, I guess the fact that I'm doing CSS would lead you to that conclusion, and it's super fair. But what I'm doing here right now is just kind of hacking around rather than being a bit more serious. Generally, what I do is I make CLI applications for the terminal, and there, generally, data storage is local, so no real backend, because there's no need for the scale of what I do, and there's no real front end, because it's just outputting to the terminal. So neither stack, I guess. Padding is 16 pixels. Let's comment this immediately. And this is the each singular notification. Thank you. Yeah, let's copy this. Boop, boop. And we wouldn't see, oh yeah, we actually do see it, because we get a new thingy here that overrides the old one. And this is very cool, the fact that Stylus applies CSS that you add immediately. So you can just go and look at what has changed. So it used to use this, but now we overrode it, which sounds weird as a word. Overrode it. Huh. And now it uses our CSS, which means that if we reload the page, it will be correct. Yeah, looks quite good. Sure, maybe in the future I'll change it up to some degree, but that is not going to be today. Boop. Yeah, so now notifications don't show PFPs that I cannot see. Well, your channel showed up in suggestion that you are doing stack development. Ah, I see. Yeah, no, not really. Nowadays, what I do usually is that I do some progress in some degree off camera. Maybe I found a cool new feature, program, built something, found something out, changed something about my setup, and then I go on and show it off. I followed you on GitHub. That's great. I have a few cool projects there that might be useful to you. Let's go ahead and look at them. First of all, we save. Boom. Let's go to GitHub. And when I said that I mostly make terminal applications, it's true. Uklaner is that, Gaff is that, Floral Barrel is that, and Actusi is that. Yes, it's called Actusi. So Uklaner is an actual useful word randomizer. That makes more sense to use when you're trying to get random words from brainstorming than other random word generators usually are, in my experience. So it's useful in that sense. Gaff lets you stage or unstage different types of git changes, like unstaging additions or staging deletions. You can express that type of concept of git with Gaff. I use it all the time. Floral Barrel is my thingy to track the shows that you watch. It has a watch later list as well. Shows that you're currently watching and shows that you have finished or dropped. That kind of functionality. And Actusi is this. It's git status for your shell terminal. What? For your shell terminal? For your shell prompt. Yeah. Actusi lets you add it to your already existing shell prompt without really being in the way, without requiring you to use an entire shell prompt. No, you just have your own shell prompt, and then you just use Actusi to get this nice output that shows you the git information, which may or may not be really slow on WSL. Beware. At least it was for me. What else do I have? Oh yeah, Clorange. Started working on it. It's a counter. We'll get to it eventually once I do more on it. Billy Berda is a touch typing practicer. Nope. At least I haven't really tried. Money isn't why I'm doing programming, although I would like money for sure. But it's just, I guess, not my main focus. I just love programming as an art. The fact that it's also my career just kind of comes along, you know? This program is literally just an infinite loop. I shit you not. It's explained in the README. If you're interested, you can go read it to figure out why it's actually useful. And this is me technically breaking a license. This is technically illegal. It might even be possible for me to get sued for this. And you know what? Let me go show it to you. So it's like a bit more known. Lamau and even lol. So Twitter emojis are open source, and you can go to their repo that has all of them as SVGs. It was annoying to me that to get all of them, I have to clone the entire repo that also has other bullshit that I don't care about. Which is why I just took all of them and create a repo with them. And there's another branch called named, where once it loads up, where I started naming them. Very rarely you will see some of them actually have names, and the way that I named them is that after the Unicode goes a dash and then the name of the emoji. I just kind of slowly but surely do it as I create my thumbnails, so I don't imagine it's ever going to be finished, at least not by myself. So yeah, that's my project, and I think I have a similar thing for Google emojis as well on my account. Well, I need to start from scratch because I'm a beginner. In regards to what? What are you trying to learn about? Web dev? AHK? Rust, maybe? I don't recommend it for a beginner, by the way. Like, legit. I love Rust. I do not recommend it for a beginner. Well, oh, web dev, okay. I was gonna say, well, that's... well, I fucked up by asking 3 questions at a time. Web dev. Well, okay, my advice is, first of all, don't take my words as gospel. Take them with a grain of salt, because I am not a web developer. It's not really the sector that I swim in. I touched it here and there, but I'm not like an expert. So consider that. What I recommend you do is try to make web dev fun. Something like what I'm doing right now, for example. I'm just changing up CSS on certain websites because I want to. Like, for example, my links are pink, right? I just found something that improved my experience and made me feel good, and got my practice out of CSS doing that type of thing. Then, earlier on the stream, I talked about Anki and the fact that it just uses HTML and it's that simple. Maybe you use Anki to remember stuff, and you can experiment with using HTML in some useful type of fashion, right? There's also this extension called Tamper Monkey that lets you execute JavaScript scripts per website, so you can make those to improve your experience here and there. Basically, you get to introduce yourself into the 3 pillars of web dev. I think it's like hard to argue that they aren't, via things that are actually fun. I don't know, building a website that truthfully I have no use for doesn't sound that fun to me, which is, I guess, why I haven't gotten into web dev yet. I just don't need to yet. Maybe you do. Maybe it's fun for you, though. But the idea is the same. Try to find something in web dev that's fun for you and is also learning. That's going to get you motivated to possibly get through the harder parts, to get something that you actually want. Not just to build a website that you really don't care about. I'm projecting here, by the way. I'm very much projecting. Maybe you do care about like making a website. Maybe you can even make it like usable and useful. But yeah, I think it makes sense to start there, and then just start discovering stuff. If you wanna go like web dev in terms of career, definitely a framework is pretty much going to be needed. In the jobs that I constantly see, they always want a framework when it comes to web dev. Well, this is super per country, so my like mentioning is irrelevant, but Next.js I see there, React I see there, Vue I see Vue a lot. But I'm in Russia, so your situation may be different in terms of what jobs are looking for. But more importantly, check them out, try them out to a considerable degree, the frameworks I mean, and then just pick the one that you actually like using. You will then be able to find a job in there, because if you like something, you're likely to be better at it than at something that you don't like. Makes sense, right? And because you're better at it, you'll be more able to find a job on it. And also, if a skill is rarer, sure, job vacancies are rarer as well, but there's a higher likelihood that you'll actually get hired. That's exactly how my first job paid me 2,000 euros a month without me having any prior commercial experience, because that job was in Rust. And they were far more willing to take me in than maybe a company that's searching for a JavaScripter. That sounds like a slur, sorry. Which are like more common than Rust developers. So basically, if you see something appear less often in vacancies, but it still appears from time to time, it may potentially be a benefit to how much you're paid as well, possibly. Rather than, oh, I have to just go and pick the most asked for skill, or rather language or framework. No, not necessarily. I hope this advice is useful to you. I'm somewhat talking out of my ass, but I have seen some stuff, so yeah. But I'm going to be ending stream. Thank you for watching. I'm a freelance editor. I edit videos, logos, photos, and many more. Oh, huh. Damn. I was actually looking for an editor, but I don't have money. I'm broke whatsoever. Because I would hire an editor. I hate editing so much. I'm thinking of starting something new. Okay. There is a lot in programming. Basically, the biggest advice is try to find something that you enjoy doing and go do that. And get really good at it. And start looking into the market pretty early on, so you don't accidentally get too interested in something that nobody pays for, like AutoHotkey. Now I'm doing it for $2 per shorts and $5 for longer videos. Like, that's a very reasonable price, don't get me wrong, but you underestimate just how poor I am. Alright, thank you for watching, and I'm going